Jimmy Billy Sr. has always been passionate about politics, but these days, he's passionate about giving back to the community. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with Jimmy one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores.
Jimmy Billy, it is so good to see you.
Good to see you, buddy.
I appreciate this.
Absolutely, and thank you for what you do.
Oh, anytime. I'm doing what God has called me to do.
Well, we got to do that, don't we?
Absolutely. And we know you. You were a former politician. You were a businessman.
Statesman.
That's what I was thinking, statesman. Yeah. But you just handed me this, and you told me who you really are.
Yeah.
And you said this: stand up and be counted. Do what you can for the underdog and show what you have to offer to those in a position of power. So what do you have to offer?
Well, I offer who I am and who I've never forgotten what it was like to be poor. And to this day that guides me. And so I'm a Gamecock. I was a Democrat.
Okay.
And that's underdog. I'm no longer a Democrat.
Right.
I'm an independent.
Right.
But and a Red Sox back in the old days, and so I didn't have a whole lot of victories. But, and I say that in jest, I had 4 brothers. We were very poor growing up. My mother was an angel, and I will never forget. And this is what people need to know about me. And if I don't tell them, but they figure out in a hurry that I'm pretty tenacious, and that my heart's in the right place.
Sure.
So I think I was about 4 years old, and my mother said, "Always help people," and I've never forgotten that.
Yeah.
And so, so interestingly enough, I bumped into Michael Wack this morning on Broad Street, and he knew that the mayor had called me about the Rose Kids just a week or 2 ago, and so what I told Michael was this: everybody deserves a mentor, and I am who I am, for better or for worse, because a person took me under his wings when I was about 15 years old. Now that person happened to be the most influential, most powerful politician at that point in time. It's Senator T. Allen McGree. And that was when there was only one senator from Charleston County, and every county had one senator.
Right.
So that person pretty much ran the show. My father was a cab driver. There was no connection between the two. For whatever reason, he saw something in me, and he became my mentor. So I was telling Michael that, and I told him, these Rose kids need a mentor. They're not bad kids. I was poor. I understand that to make a buck, sometimes you cut corners. There's no excuse for being rude, and there's no excuse for being dishonest. But I have a problem with the community. I shouldn't say the community. I have a problem with the loud voices wanting to get rid of these kids. We don't need to get rid of them. This is an opportunity for us to mentor. They're the underdogs. And what we might do in the meantime is we might change a little Jimmy Bailey into a productive person. And so that's been my life's work. And I think that whether I was on the Board of Adjustment, Planning, Zoning, Recreation Department, or whatever it was, there was never any question about my sincerity and wanting to do the right thing. And doing the right thing sometimes makes people mad.
You heard about that? I know that very well. Talk to me about those loud voices when you think of the issue with the Rose Kids right now in the city market.
Well, here is, I have to go back a little bit. When I was in the House of Representatives, half of my district was African American, the east side, the west side, and so forth. And for 6 years, they talked to me about economic development and having a piece of the pie. even though I was very poor growing up, I was white. And in the 50s, that made me part of an economic structure that I always would get a job before an African American person. That was just the way it was. It wasn't right, but that's the way it was. So these folks during my legislative days were telling me they wanted a slice of pie. I didn't understand what they meant. And shortly after I retired from the General Assembly, my wife and I went down to Jamaica for vacation and lying on the beach in the grill. I told my wife, I said, look at this. Everybody's got a little piece of the action down here, selling aloe leaves or aloe oil, massage. And some things weren't so legal, but tourism was their number one industry. But what was our number one industry?
Tourism.
Their per capita income was $1,200 at the time. This was 1994 or 5, I guess. And so I said, well, if these people can get a little piece of the action, why can't our folks get a little piece of the action? And that's when it clicked with me, what my constituents had been trying to tell me. So when the Rose Kids situation came up 12 years ago, right. I bumped into Joe Riley and I said, I think I can help you with that. The kids aren't bad, Joe. They just want a piece of the action. They want a piece of the pie. And Joe said, let's make it happen. Mm-hmm. And so the same thing exists today. I mean, but to back up to answer your question, there were merchants on Market Street raising Cain because they said these kids were hurting their business. Well, you know, I would say that something else was hurting their business. But we had to deal with the situation. We had to teach the kids about the proper way to do it. And so that's when we trained the kids with entrepreneurial training and taught them how the right way to deal with these loud voices. And it worked. In fact, that program won the highest award given by the U.S. Conference of Mayors one year, and beaten out New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, you name it, we beat them out. And because this program, every community has the same problem with young people. And if you, you know, I didn't realize I was poor until I was about 11 years old. And that's about the way it is with these kids too. When they realize that if they want to get those Air Jordans or whatever they are today, how they're going to get the money. And if these kids will do if they're willing to take this art form and use that to their advantage, to take a piece of the tourism business, to get a piece of the pie, I think we owe it to them to help them. And those loud voices, we have to remind them, and some of them are friends of mine that grew up here, I'll have to remind them, we weren't a whole hell of a lot different growing up than these kids, other than we were white and they are African American. And so we need to help them. We don't need to try to punish them. We don't need to try to discourage them. We need to encourage them. This is the opportunity for some of these loud voices to be a mentor to one of these kids, as Alan Legree was a mentor to me. I didn't have a prayer had it not been for him. And so the loud voices, you know, that we just need to sit down with them and bring them and try to talk to them and make them realize that if it isn't these kids, it's going to be something else. I mean, you're going to run out of things to complain about before it's all said and done. But the bottom line is, as those folks in Jamaica got a piece of the action, our young people deserve a piece of the action too, young and old.
You talk about the highest award. Let's talk about yours, the Order of Pall Mall. Where are you still emotionally after receiving that award?
Well, I was very surprised and very humbled by it. And Ernie passed away, who's a senator, and he and I were elected together, Glenn McCollum, Charlie Lybrand,
right,
and a couple others, and one young man named Jerome Smalls. They wrote letters to the governor. And, you know, I guess it was a slow day in South Carolina when they selected me. But it had, and the basis of the nomination was Yes Carolina and what the organization I founded and ran for 13 years. And we know over, and that was a program we used with the Rose Kids for the city of Charleston. We developed a special program for them. So that was an entrepreneurial program. Over 20,000 kids in the state of South Carolina have taken entrepreneurship. And I get text messages and Facebook messages from them to this day. Jerome just sent me the most wonderful note thanking me for hooking up with him. Right. And there's a great story. I was in the airport one day going to Washington, D.C., because I was asked to go up there to lobby for entrepreneurship for young people. And there was Tim Scott coming out, and Tim was a congressman, and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Washington." "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, my plane got canceled." And there was a terrific ice storm. Well, mine wasn't canceled, his was. And I said, "As a matter of fact, I'm going to meet with your office." And he said, "For what?" I told him. And he said, "Jimmy, I want to know more." And so I told him about Jerome Smalls. Jerome was in the 6th or 7th grade at the time at Zucker Middle School.
Right.
And lo and behold, a week or two later, Tim Scott walks into Jerome Smalls' classroom with a couple of pizzas that he bought for the class and said, "Who's Jerome Smalls?" And Jerome said, "Who's this guy?" But the bottom line is Tim mentors this young person today. So here's a young fellow that was raised by his grandmother, never knew his father. Mother was in the penitentiary at the time, when I met him, and unfortunately she's out now and doing fine. But so Alan Legree, state senator, takes me under his wings. Fast forward all these years, Tim Scott takes Jerome Smalls under his wings. Right. And Jerome now is a junior at George Washington University. Tim calls him from time to time, and Tim and Jerome and Tim's mother go out to lunch. I mean, that's what it's all about. And that's what drives me.
Wow. Well, obviously, you know, you have a tremendous career in politics, from your days in House of Representatives to running for mayor of Charleston many, many years ago. I have to ask this: what is the state of state politics in your mind right now, Jimmy?
Well, it's a different ball game than when I was up there. I mean, the beginning of the partisanship was very evident, and so now, you know, there's one party dominates there, one party dominates in Washington. I think that the Democratic Party is their own worst enemy, and they've been mad for me to say that, but I do think that. I was elected as a liberal Democrat in a Republican district. People say, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I never abandoned my ideas about feelings for people. But I talked about tax reform. I talked about property taxes. I talked about pocketbook issues. And unfortunately, I think the Democratic Party today, all they talk about are the things that you learn in church and that everybody should be doing. But unfortunately, that doesn't win elections anymore. If you don't win an election, you can't do anything. So you have elected people who, in state politics and federal government, are just to the right of the center, and their basis is all crime and taxes and all that, and they so they are way to that side, and every now and then something a little bit comes from to the left of the middle, but by and large, that's what is governing South Carolina and the United States at this point in time. So I think we need Marlon Kimpson is a wonderful person, and in my opinion, our community depends on his leadership because he understands all the sides Democrats stand for, but he also understands pocketbook issues. And so he is, to my way of thinking, the only person from Charleston County that really has that grasp that he can talk to both sides. It's a different world, but and of course the media and everything is instantaneous nowadays, and
Yeah.
that's right. So would I like to be up there? No. No. I saw Bobby Harold the other day, and we had a nice chat. He's just such a wonderful person, a wonderful family. And I said, "Bob, do you miss it?" He said, "I miss getting things done." So I thought that was a good response. I miss getting things done. I don't know what's being done in Columbia. I don't know what's being done in Washington. And Washington in particular is a stalemate. But would I want to be up there? No. No.
So tell me, I mean, when you take off your political hat and your, how can I say this, humanitarian hat, who else is Jimmy Bailey Sr.?
Grandfather to the three most wonderful little children that when little Betsy was born, she'll be 12 years old in May, I really didn't know I had that much love in my heart. And then James Julian Bailey III comes along, and then John Swinton Townsend Bailey comes along, and so that's my life beyond. Now, I still like to drink a beer on Friday night. And I love going to public places and meeting different people.
Right.
But I live to help people.
That is amazing. That is really amazing. And you know where I love to go all the time? Almost every day. Callie's Hot Little Biscuits.
Oh, yeah. Now, she is, what a remarkable young woman that is. Her father raised her by himself up until she was about 11 years old when he remarried. And he remembers what it was like to be poor too, and he gave her all the love and attention, and he's a good businessman. He gave her the business sense, and she's just been invited to go to, selected as one of 25 in the country, I think it is, to go to Babson College for a entrepreneurship course. And I think she's in Washington, and someday, if it's not this week, it's next week, and she'll be meeting with Lindsay, my good buddy Lindsay, and Tim, and the others on the delegation. But what an amazing entrepreneurial story that is.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish, well, I'll get a biscuit today too.
There you
of course.
go, good.
I mean, at the end of the day, write the headline. What headline do you want people to write about you? Jimmy Bailey was
A people lover.
Well, Jimmy Bailey Sr., thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
Well, thank you very much. All my friends call me Little Jimmy because son Jimmy.
Right, well, he's a little taller than you, that's right.
Well, this is great, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Keep up the good work.
Oh, I definitely will.